Imagine a moment so ordinary, yet so deadly, it could shatter everything you think you know about the people closest to you. That was the morning when billionaire Chike Obi, a man whose wealth could buy islands and palaces, lifted a cup without knowing it held a secret powerful enough to destroy him. The sun had barely kissed the Lagos skyline, and the mansion hummed with routine, the scent of freshly brewed coffee mingling with polished marble. Chike's wife, Amara, smiled across the table, her eyes glinting like polished onyx, calm, composed, untouchable. He raised the cup to his lips, thinking of the board meeting ahead, unaware that one small sip could unravel the life he had built so carefully. Before we proceed, please help our channel grow. Hit that subscribe button and like the video, thank you. Then, like lightning breaking a quiet sky, the maid screamed, "Don't drink it!" Chike froze. Time itself seemed to hold its breath. The cup trembled in his hand as he stared at her wide, terrified eyes. Something inside screamed danger, betrayal, and a truth he was not ready to face. The staff whispered behind their hands, the air thick with suspense, and in that split second, a fortune, a marriage, and a reputation teetered on the edge of disaster. What did she see in that cup? And what secret was Amara hiding behind her perfect smile? Sit tight, because this story is only beginning. Have you ever looked at someone and felt the warmth of a smile, yet sensed a shadow lurking beneath it? That was Amara, Chike's wife, as she poured another cup for him after the maid's warning. Her hands were steady, her voice sweet as honey, but the eyes told another story. They flicked nervously to the side, a hesitation too brief for most to notice, yet enough for a man like Chike to feel the unease crawling up his spine. He wanted to believe in her innocence. He wanted to trust the woman who had promised him love. But instinct, dear viewers, is a whisper of truth the heart often refuses to hear. As breakfast continued in uneasy silence, the mansion felt colder than the polished marble floors suggested. Chike's mind raced. Was it merely a prank, or something darker? Memories of small inconsistencies, forgotten promises, and whispered conversations from the staff now crowded his thoughts like an unwelcome storm. Every polite laugh, every gentle touch from Amara now carried a question mark. And in that room filled with gold and luxury, one question burned brighter than the sun rising over Lagos. What secrets hide behind that perfect smile, and how far will they go to keep them buried? In a house as grand as Chike's, even the tiniest whisper carries weight. The staff had begun noticing things, subtle shifts that didn't sit right with anyone who had spent years in service. The cook mentioned a missing spice rack, the gardener spoke of doors left unlocked at odd hours, and the drivers exchanged glances when Amara's laughter echoed down the halls a little too sharply, a little too forced. It was as if the mansion itself had begun to hold its breath, waiting for the storm to break. And the whispers, they were not just gossip. They were warnings, small tremors of truth that even the walls could not contain. Chike, lost in meetings and his morning routine, remained oblivious to the growing tension. But the maid, brave, sharp-eyed, and watchful, felt it all. Every glance, every hurried footstep, every hushed conversation between Amara and a mysterious visitor in the study added to her unease. She knew something dangerous was brewing, a secret dark enough to shatter the billionaire's carefully constructed life. And so, dear viewers, tension wrapped the mansion like a thick fog, silent, suffocating, and deadly. One wrong move, one overlooked sign, and everything would come crashing down. The question now was, who would speak first and who would regret it? Imagine receiving a gift that makes your heart race, not with joy, but with unease. That morning, just as Chike was preparing for another busy day, a package arrived. No sender, no note, just a plain brown box resting on the polished floor, as if it had been placed there by fate itself. The mansion fell silent. Even the walls seemed to lean in, listening. Chike's first instinct was curiosity, his fingers brushing over the tape, imagining the luxury it might contain. But the maid, eyes wide and trembling, whispered, "Sir, maybe you shouldn't open it." Her voice, usually so calm, carried the weight of warning. Inside, the contents were simple at first glance. A delicate cup, but one that smelled faintly of bitter herbs, strange powders, and something unfamiliar. Chike held it, feeling a chill crawl up his spine, while Amara's smile remained, polished and unshaken. The staff exchanged nervous glances. Tension hung heavier than the morning sun over Lagos. Questions raced through Chike's mind. Who sent it? Why? And what was hidden in plain sight? Dear viewers, in moments like these, the smallest objects can hold the biggest secrets. And in this mansion, secrets were about to roar louder than anyone could imagine. Sometimes the quietest nights hide the loudest truths. That evening, long after the mansion had gone to sleep, the maid tiptoed through the dim corridors, her heart pounding like a drum. She had heard whispers earlier, muffled voices, sharp and angry. But tonight, she could not ignore them. Peering through the slightly ajar study door, she saw Chike's wife, Amara, in the middle of a heated argument with a stranger whose face was hidden in shadows. Her voice, sweet and controlled by day, now carried a bite that made the air tremble. The words failure and exposed flew between them like daggers. Chike would never know, not yet, that the life he trusted was beginning to unravel. The maid's eyes widened as she realized the stranger had left something small on the desk. A paper, a note, perhaps a warning. Fear mingled with courage in her chest. She knew she had to act, but how could she reveal what she had seen without endangering herself? Dear viewers, in moments like this, the line between loyalty and survival blurs. Secrets whispered in the shadows always have a way of reaching the light, and for Chike, that light was about to burn brighter than he could imagine. Sometimes one word can stop time itself. That morning, as Chike lifted the cup that would change everything, the maid's scream cut through the mansion like a thunderclap. "Don't drink it!" The crystal cup froze midair. His hand shook. The polished floors reflected the terror in everyone's eyes. The staff, silent and wide-eyed. The gardener frozen mid-step. Even Amara's smile faltered, like a mask cracking under heat. For a moment, the world held its breath. Every tick of the grandfather clock became a drumbeat of suspense. The maid rushed forward, trembling, pointing at the cup. Her voice, sharp and urgent, carried a warning no wealth could ignore. Chike stared, heart pounding, mind racing. The air smelled faintly of bitterness, of danger, of secrets long buried. Even the walls seemed to lean in, heavy with anticipation. Dear viewers, in that instant, a fortune, a marriage, and a reputation balanced on a knife's edge. What had she seen? What was hidden inside the simple cup that everyone assumed was harmless? One sip, and the truth would either shatter or save him, but only if he listened. And Chike, he was listening now. Sometimes the smallest things carry the heaviest secrets. The cup that Chike held trembled in his hands, not because of its weight, but because of the darkness it contained. The maid's eyes darted nervously between him and the polished rim, warning clear. This was no ordinary drink. Chike leaned closer, heart pounding, noticing a faint, bitter smell rising from the liquid. A scent that made his stomach twist with unease. There was something deliberate about it, something meant to harm, to deceive, to unravel everything he had built. As the maid explained in hushed, urgent tones, the cup had been tampered with. A mixture of herbs and powders, ones that could induce hallucinations, confusion, even permanent disgrace if consumed, swirled invisibly in its depths. Chike's mind raced. Who would dare? And why? Amara, standing beside him, maintained her poised smile, but the glimmer in her eyes hinted at secrets she thought were hidden. Dear viewers, in the world of wealth and power, betrayal often hides in the mundane. A cup of tea, a simple gesture, a trusted hand. And in that moment, Chike realized something chilling. Danger had been sipping at his life long before he ever touched the cup. Sometimes the truth waits quietly in the corners, hidden in plain sight, until someone brave or desperate discovers it. That evening, Chike could no longer ignore the uneasy threads of suspicion weaving through his life. Alone in the study, he noticed a drawer slightly ajar, a place Amara rarely touched. With cautious hands, he opened it and found letters, hidden photographs, and secret notes. Evidence of conversations he was never meant to see. Each piece painted a picture of betrayal more vivid than he could have imagined. The calm, perfect life he believed in was nothing but a shadow of lies. As he read further, the weight of deceit pressed down on him. Names whispered in hushed tones, promises broken, alliances formed behind closed doors, all pointing to a life meticulously constructed to manipulate him. Even the loyal staff exchanged glances, knowing the truth would soon erupt like wildfire. Dear viewers, in moments like these, wealth cannot shield the heart from betrayal. Chike's world, once polished and secure, now trembled on the edge of collapse. And in the shadows, the secrets waited, patient and relentless, ready to consume everything he thought he knew about love, loyalty, and trust. Have you ever realized that someone you trust completely can hide a world within themselves you never imagined? For Chike, that revelation came crashing down like a sudden storm. The letters, photographs, and secret accounts revealed a life Amara had carefully concealed. A life filled with meetings, secret trips, and dealings that left him stunned. The woman who had smiled across the breakfast table, who had whispered promises of forever, was living a parallel existence, one he had no part in. Every memory of her warmth now flickered with doubt. As Chike pieced together the evidence, his heart ached not just with betrayal, but with disbelief. How had he been so blind? The mansion, once a place of opulence and security, now felt like a labyrinth of deception. Even the maid, who had warned him before, shook her head in sympathy, knowing the truth was worse than anyone could have predicted. Dear viewers, in moments like this, trust fractures, and reality feels sharper than any blade. For Chike, the discovery of Amara's hidden life marked a turning point, not just in his marriage, but in the path that would force him to confront lies, deceit, and the courage it takes to face the truth. Sometimes the smallest hands hold the greatest power. The maid, who had stood silently in the shadows, suddenly became the guardian of truth in Chike's unraveling world. She knew what the letters, the cup, and the hidden messages meant long before anyone else did. Her courage was quiet, but fierce. She stepped forward, trembling yet resolute, guiding Chike through the maze of deceit that had been carefully constructed around him. Every whispered warning, every secret observation she had made, now served as a shield against the betrayal that threatened to consume him. It was her bravery that illuminated the path to the truth. With her help, Chike confronted evidence he had feared, pieces of his marriage that painted a picture far darker than he could have imagined. The mansion, once filled with silence and uncertainty, now pulsed with the energy of revelation. Dear viewers, in life, heroes often appear in unexpected forms, in those we overlook or underestimate. And here, the maid, loyal, observant, and courageous, showed that honesty and bravery could change the course of even a billionaire's destiny. Without her, the hidden treachery might have remained buried, and the consequences far worse than anyone could imagine. When betrayal cuts deepest, the heart becomes a battlefield. Chike sat alone in the vast, silent mansion. The evidence of Amara's double life spread before him like jagged shards of glass. Anger surged through him, hot, bitter, uncontrollable. But alongside it was disbelief, a heavy, sinking weight that made every memory of love feel like a lie. How could the woman he trusted with his heart and empire craft such deception? Every smile, every gentle touch now felt tainted, a performance rehearsed for his eyes alone. Yet amid the storm of emotion, a quieter, darker question gnawed at him. What should he do next? Revenge whispered seductively, promising satisfaction in exposing her lies. Forgiveness, on the other hand, seemed impossible, a distant echo of morality he wasn't sure he could reach. Dear viewers, it is in these moments, when the soul wavers between fury and grace, that character is tested. Chike realized that wealth could buy anything, but it could not buy clarity or peace. And as the night stretched on, he understood that the choice he made now would not just define his marriage, but the very man he was becoming. Sometimes the truth is heavier than pride, and denial shields those unwilling to face it. Chike summoned his family to the mansion, evidence of Amara's deception carefully laid out before them. Yet instead of shock or outrage, he was met with resistance. She could never do this, his eldest brother said, shaking his head. Chike, you're seeing things that aren't there. His parents clutched each other, murmuring about appearances and reputations. Even trusted family friends questioned Chike's judgment. To them, the idea that Amara could betray a man like him was unthinkable. But the maid, standing silently at the edge of the room, shook her head in quiet defiance. She knew what the family refused to see. That betrayal often wears a mask of perfection. Dear viewers, when lies are wrapped in charm and wealth, even the closest hearts can turn blind. Chike felt the weight of isolation pressing down, a billionaire surrounded by disbelief, forced to navigate a web of deceit alone. And in that suffocating tension, he realized something chilling. To uncover the truth fully, he could not rely on anyone else, not even family. Sometimes, courage must come from within, and justice from unexpected allies. Sometimes help comes from the most unexpected places, and not all allies bring comfort. Some bring risk. One evening, as Chike wrestled with anger and betrayal in the quiet of his office, a knock echoed through the room. It was Tund, a longtime acquaintance from his early business days, a man known for bending rules and seeing the world in shades of gray. I know what you're facing, Tund said, leaning casually against the desk, a faint smile playing on his lips. And I can help, but you must decide how far you're willing to go. Chike's heart raced. Here was a chance to expose Amara fully, to reclaim what had been stolen. Yet the moral cost weighed heavily on him. Dear viewers, in moments like these, every decision feels like a crossroads. Tund offered strategies that danced on the edge of legality, clever manipulations that could unmask lies without bloodshed. But at what cost to Chike's own soul? The mansion, once a sanctuary, now felt like a chessboard, with pieces moving under shadows. And as the billionaire considered this dangerous ally's offer, he realized that choosing the path of truth is rarely simple, and sometimes the right choice is also the hardest to take. Sometimes the present can only be understood by looking into the shadows of the past. That night, as Chike sat in the dim glow of the study, memories flooded him. Moments he had overlooked, small cracks in trust he had ignored. He remembered Amara's whispered excuses for late nights, the hidden phone she always kept close, the sudden trips she claimed were urgent business. Each memory now carried a weight he hadn't felt before, like pieces of a puzzle revealing the full, unsettling picture. The mansion, with all its opulence, had masked what was always there. Deception carefully woven into everyday life. And then, flashbacks of his own choices appeared, the mistakes that had made betrayal possible. He had trusted too easily, ignored gut feelings, and allowed appearances to blind him to reality. Dear viewers, in life, even the mighty can stumble when pride and comfort override caution. The past had been whispering warnings, and Chike finally understood. Betrayal is never born overnight. It grows quietly in the cracks left by neglect, secrecy, and misplaced trust. And now, the echoes of the past demanded attention, guiding him toward a confrontation he could no longer avoid. Just when you think the storm has revealed all its fury, there is always another gust waiting to strike. Chike discovered that Amara's deception ran deeper than he ever imagined. Hidden accounts, clandestine meetings, and forged documents painted a chilling picture. She had been planning to siphon his wealth, manipulate alliances, and even frame him for actions he had never taken. The perfect smile that once charmed the room now felt like a mask of danger, hiding ambition and betrayal so meticulously plotted it could have toppled empires. As Chike pieced it together, the mansion felt alive with secrets, each room whispering a warning. Dear viewers, betrayal rarely arrives alone. It carries shadows, accomplices, and consequences that touch every corner of life. Even the staff, who had witnessed subtle hints of Amara's scheming, now realized the scope of her intentions. Chike's pulse quickened, not just with anger, but with urgency. He had to act, but carefully, for one wrong step could trigger irreversible disaster. And in the midst of it all, the maid's courage shone brighter than ever, guiding him through a labyrinth of lies, danger, and treachery. For Chike, this was no longer just a battle of hearts. It was a fight for truth, justice, and survival. Justice often waits patiently, hiding in the details until the moment arrives to strike. That evening, Chike, guided by the maid's observations and his own growing suspicion, set a plan in motion. Hidden cameras, careful notes, and whispered surveillance allowed him to watch the mansion from a distance, catching glimpses of Amara's secret maneuvers. Then, like a predator closing in, intuition told him the time had come. There she was, in the study once more, handling documents and packages she thought were unseen. Every movement, every glance, every hushed whisper betrayed her confidence. As Chike and the maid silently observed, the truth revealed itself in sharp clarity. Dear viewers, there is a moment when deceit becomes undeniable, when lies unravel faster than the mind can process. Amara, confident in her web of manipulation, now stood trapped by her own ambition. The mansion, once a palace of opulence and trust, had become a stage where betrayal was laid bare. Chike's heart pounded, not just with vindication, but with the heavy weight of realization. Confronting her now would change everything: marriage, wealth, and life as he knew it. And in that charged silence, one question burned brighter than the chandeliers above. What would he do next? Some moments arrive like a storm you cannot escape, shaking the very ground beneath your feet. Chike finally called Amara into the study, evidence in hand, heart pounding, voice steady but cold. The mansion, usually a sanctuary of polished marble and quiet luxury, felt tense and alive, every shadow seeming to whisper the truth that was about to erupt. Amara, he said, holding up the proof of her betrayal. How long were you planning to hide this from me? Her perfectly rehearsed composure faltered for a fraction of a second, just enough for Chike to see the truth gleaming in her eyes. Fear, guilt, and a fleeting desperation. Dear viewers, confrontation is a weapon sharper than anger alone. Words flew like knives, accusations met with denials, silence cut by the echo of lies laid bare. The maid stood nearby, tense yet resolute, witnessing the unraveling of a life that had once seemed untouchable. Chike's heart raced, not just with betrayal, but with the clarity of seeing deception in its rawest form. In that charged room, love and trust collided with ambition and deceit, and Chike realized something profound. Facing betrayal is never just about punishment. It is about reclaiming power, dignity, and the right to decide what comes next. Sometimes the heaviest truths come spilling out in tears, unguarded and raw. As the confrontation unfolded, Amara's carefully constructed walls crumbled. Her voice quivered as she confessed, admitting the lies, the secret accounts, and the plans she had kept hidden from Chike. The mansion, once silent under the weight of suspicion, now resonated with honesty, painful yet liberating. Chike listened, his heart a mix of sorrow, disbelief, and a strange clarity. The woman he had loved was human, flawed, and exposed. But the truth at last had been spoken. And then, the maid stepped forward, her courage shining brighter than the chandeliers overhead. Without her vigilance, without her bravery in standing against fear and secrecy, none of this would have been revealed. Dear viewers, heroes often appear in the quietest corners, unnoticed until the moment the world needs them most. Chike turned to her, gratitude and awe in his eyes, realizing that integrity and courage are sometimes more powerful than wealth. In that room of confession and revelation, justice, truth, and human bravery converged, leaving an indelible lesson. Courage can illuminate even the darkest of betrayals, and those willing to stand for truth often change the course of destiny itself. Secrets, no matter how deeply buried, have a way of escaping into the light. News of Amara's betrayal spread through Chike's social circle like wildfire. Friends, colleagues, and acquaintances who once bowed to her charm now recoiled in shock. Invitations were rescinded, whispered gossip filled every corridor, and the mansion, once a hub of elegance and prestige, felt the invisible weight of judgment pressing against its walls. Chike watched it all unfold with a strange mix of vindication and sorrow, realizing that wealth and status could not shield anyone from the truth. The maid, standing quietly at Chike's side, had become more than an observer. She was a symbol of courage, the one who had illuminated the lies hidden beneath luxury and smiles. Dear viewers, Betrayal Exposed does not just shatter trust. It reshapes relationships, reputations, and realities. For Chike, it was a lesson in vigilance, in listening to instincts, and in valuing those who speak truth when everyone else remains silent. As the social world reeled from the revelations, one thing became clear. Deception may thrive in secrecy, but the power of truth, courage, and integrity can overturn even the most carefully constructed facades. Sometimes the hardest lessons come not from loss, but from the reflection that follows. Chike sat alone in the study, the echoes of betrayal and revelation still ringing in his ears. He thought of the love he had given, the trust he had freely offered, and the loyalty he had assumed would be returned. Every decision, every moment of oversight now carried new weight. He realized that trust is both fragile and powerful, something that can build empires or crumble them when misplaced. As he pondered, Chike also understood the importance of discernment. Wealth and status cannot protect the heart from deception. Only awareness, courage, and careful judgment can. Dear viewers, love without vigilance can blind even the wisest, and loyalty without boundaries can become a weapon in the hands of the deceitful. Yet, in these lessons lay hope. Chike knew that while betrayal had struck deep, it had also sharpened his understanding of human nature, of intentions, and of the value of those who speak truth even when inconvenient. In this quiet reflection, he vowed to rebuild, not just wealth but trust, integrity, and the clarity to recognize who truly deserved a place in his life. The universe has a way of balancing its scales, and sometimes justice arrives with a quiet, undeniable force. Amara, who once moved through life with confidence and deceit, began to feel the consequences of her actions. Deals she had relied on faltered, alliances she thought were secure crumbled, and whispers of her betrayal reached places she could not control. It was as if every lie, every hidden agenda had a weight that finally pressed down, unrelenting and just. Chike watched silently, understanding that some punishments are not enforced by hands, but by the natural consequences of choices made in darkness. Dear viewers, there is a lesson in every downfall. What is sown in secrecy will one day be reaped in full view. Amara's schemes, carefully plotted and executed, now revealed their fragility, collapsing like a house of cards. The mansion that once sheltered her ambitions became a silent witness to karma's power. And in the midst of this poetic justice, Chike found a quiet satisfaction, not in revenge, but in the restoration of truth, balance, and moral order. The story reminds us all. Deception may thrive for a time, but integrity and honesty always find their way back to light. After storms pass, the quiet that follows is often where true healing begins. Chike sat in the garden, sunlight spilling over the polished paths of his mansion, and felt the weight of betrayal slowly lift. Anger, shock, and grief still lingered, but for the first time, he could breathe without tension clawing at his chest. The maid, who had stood steadfast through every moment of deceit, joined him, not with words, but with the comforting presence of someone who had helped restore clarity. Together, they reflected on what had been lost and what could still be rebuilt. Forgiveness, dear viewers, is not weakness. It is strength. Chike realized that while Amara's betrayal could never be undone, he could release the hold of bitterness on his heart. In this gentle, introspective phase, he learned that healing begins with acceptance, understanding, and choosing peace over revenge. Each sunrise reminded him that life, even after deception, could carry hope, resilience, and new beginnings. And as he looked toward the horizon, he understood this truth. The heart, once broken, can mend stronger than before, guided by courage, wisdom, and the courage to trust again. After the storm of betrayal and revelation, Chike began the slow but steady work of rebuilding his life. The mansion, once heavy with tension and deception, now felt lighter, filled with purpose and clarity. He returned to his work, not as a man hardened by wealth alone, but as someone tempered by truth, experience, and the courage to see people for who they truly were. Allies who had remained loyal through the uncertainty stepped forward, offering support, wisdom, and partnership in ventures both personal and professional. Chike also found clarity about himself. Dear viewers, rebuilding is more than restoring what was lost. It is transforming pain into growth, betrayal into insight. He learned to trust cautiously but deeply, to value those who act with integrity, and to focus on goals that aligned with his principles. The maid, now more than a witness, became a confidant and a symbol of loyalty and bravery. And as he looked around at a life being reconstructed from the ashes of deceit, Chike understood a vital truth. Wealth can buy comfort, but resilience, purpose, and trustworthy allies are what truly build a life worth living. Truth has a way of spreading beyond the walls of any mansion, reaching ears, hearts, and minds in unexpected places. News of Chike's ordeal and Amara's betrayal traveled back to the village, carried by whispers, visitors, and letters. The community, once oblivious to the undercurrents of deceit, now reflected on the lessons hidden in the tale. Elders spoke in hushed tones about vigilance, trust, and the importance of seeing beyond appearances, while young people learned that even the wealthy and powerful are not immune to betrayal. The ripple effect was undeniable. What happened in the mansion became a lesson for everyone who called the village home. The maid, whose courage had been central to exposing the truth, became a symbol of integrity and bravery in the village. Dear viewers, sometimes heroes are celebrated not for wealth or status, but for standing firm when the world seems silent. Families discussed honesty at their firesides, neighbors reflected on loyalty in their friendships, and the entire community felt the weight and wisdom of the story. Chike, observing these changes, realized that his trials had grown into something larger than personal heartbreak. They had sparked awareness, reflection, and moral clarity that reached far beyond his walls. Dear viewers, every story has its lesson, and in the saga of the Forbidden Cup, the truth is clear. Vigilance, courage, and integrity matter more than wealth, status, or appearances. Chike's journey, from trust to betrayal, from heartbreak to clarity, teaches us that deception can hide behind the sweetest smiles, but it can never withstand honesty and bravery. The maid's courage, the clarity of observation, and Chike's ultimate choice to face the truth remind us all that standing for what is right, even when frightening, changes destinies. So, dear viewers, what will you do when faced with hidden danger or deceit? Will you listen to your instincts, speak the truth, and act with courage? Or will you allow silence and fear to let betrayal fester? Life, much like that fateful cup, often tests us in small, unnoticed ways, revealing who we truly are when the stakes are highest. Take this story into your own life. Forgive when you must, stay vigilant when you doubt, and never underestimate the power of courage. And if this tale stirred your heart, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to African Folktales by Alexi, because every story, every lesson, and every truth deserves to reach someone who needs it. Thank you for watching. Stay tuned for more exciting stories. God bless you.